Hey guys, I got a pretty deep topic we're going to dive into this week that might answer a lot of questions and bring some real peace to your heart as well. But before I dive in, I want to encourage you to check out our announcements at the end of the video, because we're rallying all the wild-eyed gospel junkies for some special events in the next few weeks and months in several regions here in America and some other spots around the world at the start of 2017. I'm going to be in Georgia, New York City, Ohio, Omaha, Nebraska, Virginia, all across Canada, California, Pittsburgh, Germany. Heck, you could even intern with me in Russia and Mongolia. So check out the end for details. And I've also got a special first-time announcement about a new mission trip that you're going to want to find out about. So also, if you're watching this in the archives sometime in the future, you can find all of our current event schedule at thenewmystics.com/schools. So, we put a lot of work into these events, and the hard thing is usually just getting the word out about this stuff. So do us a favor, spread the news to all your buddies, okay? Now, let's dive in. It is so valuable, for starters, for us as a church to return to the early creeds of the church, like the Nicene Creed, the Apostles' Creed, and for us to value the important early ecumenical councils would do us a lot of good. I mean, these guys help sort out some of the most basic fundamental understanding for us in terms of Christology, who Jesus is, and understanding the Trinity, etc. So, many churches are still confused about who Jesus is in his hypostatic union. He is both fully God and fully man. As you know, the hypostatic union is how we describe that Jesus is both divine and human. He's two natures in one person. Now, this is Christianity 101. In the same way, the Holy Trinity is three persons in one essence. The Father is not the Son is not the Spirit is not the Father. They are three distinct persons, yet one undivided God. The Father is God. The Son is God. The Spirit is God. Now look, this is timeless stuff. And you may think, well, hey, that's just the basics, John. That stuff's been around almost 2,000 years. Yeah, but most of the church is still totally wrapped up in some of the same wrong ways of thinking that the early fathers were when they were fighting against crazy ideas that were distracting us from the reality of God. And unless you're a Lutheran or something, you probably aren't familiar with the creeds. And look, they are so relevant to us. Of course, some folks may think that creeds are divisive, or they're too irrelevant, or theological creeds are just too formal, stuffy, stifling. We don't need the creeds, they say we don't need theology, we just need Jesus. Okay, well, what you just said there is a creed. A creed is just a statement of belief. It's a proclamation of what you hold to be true. And if that's your creed, we don't need theology, we just need Jesus, well, the creed you just stated is a woefully insufficient one, because it doesn't tell me anything about who Jesus is or what he's done on our behalf. It's like the person who says we don't need theology, we just need to live it. Okay, well, that is also a creed, and one that denies the chief article of Christianity, which is justification through faith alone, not by your good deeds that you're living, okay? So look, the point of good theology is it actually liberates us. So we're not falling back upon the darkness of religion and dead works and human effort, a false human focus, but it puts us back onto who Jesus is and what he single-handedly accomplished. And there is a lot of glory on that, okay? Well, look, there are a number of early church creeds. And of course, they're not all completely infallible in every aspect, which is why the Protestant reformers were clear to say that if there's something in a creed that doesn't seem to jive with scriptures, it's okay to question it. But the whole point of the creeds was to clarify what Scripture was telling us, not pull away from Scripture. The same with the early church councils, which were gatherings of bishops and presbyters, men who were leaders in the church, who were battling destructive heresies. But as the church councils got further along throughout the centuries, it's not that they were trying to add more and more minute detail to what we're supposed to dogmatically believe. Rather, they were trying to keep their assertions simple and leave open the infinite exploration of God. They were merely trying to write off certain ways of talking about God that were dodgy, but nevertheless, in their attempt to clarify the earlier creeds, well, the later ones did end up getting into a lot more detail as a byproduct. And that's where it is possible to start splitting some hairs in metaphysical areas about God that we just don't understand. So, after the Apostles' Creed and then the Nicene Creed, the next big one was Chalcedon, where they clarified the bit about Jesus having two natures in one person. But even after this, there was controversy because there were two schools of thought. People who wanted to focus on the unity of Jesus as one, and then people who wanted to clarify that he had two natures, God and man. Well, both sides of this equation are radically true. Jesus is fully God, he is fully man, but the glory of it is that the two have become one in him. Again, Christianity 101. But the devil is in the details. And the question began to arise whether Jesus has two energies or one energy, whatever an energy is. And a lot of this was semantics and quibbling over language between church leaders who spoke different languages anyways and lived hundreds of miles apart and didn't communicate any better than we do with friends on Facebook. But at the same time, this stuff did have massive ramifications and extremes on either side of the ditch. So there was a question, does Jesus have one energy or two energies? And the other question was similar, does Jesus have one will or two wills? Does he have a divine will together with a human will, or does he just have one will? Now, there are names for these ideas. I'll give them to you, but it's not important you remember them unless you're just a nerd, okay? There's a monoenergism, which is the idea that Jesus just has one energy. Mono means one, or it means a bad disease you get in high school or college if you kiss the wrong person. And monothelitism means Jesus just has one will, okay? So as time passed by and things pushed all the way up into the 6th century, perhaps the very last council that the church still holds as sort of a binding ecumenical council where both East and West agree, where things are considered still to be foundational issues that are resolved, although by now they are beginning to split the splinters and not everyone is entirely agreed. But look, one of these last councils was the third council held in Constantinople. It's called Constantinople III. Okay, even back then they liked sequels. Return of Constantinople, Constantinople Strikes Back. Anyway, in Constantinople III, they made a proclamation that honestly, when I first read it, I had a little difficult time getting my head around it because they said these two isms, monoenergism and monothelitism, these are both heresies. Jesus did not have just one energy, he had two, a divine and human energy. And Jesus did not just have one will, he had two wills, a human and a divine will. Now see, this is where it began to get a little bit troubled. Were they saying Jesus was schizo? Already so many teach that Jesus and the Father have two separate wills because of Gethsemane. As Jesus steps into the full depth of becoming and bearing our sin in the Garden of Gethsemane, as he fully begins to empathetically bear our corruption in his own body, it is such a weight and a burden that he begins to sweat drops of blood. And it's where we get this dramatic statement in Luke 22 where he says, "Father, if you're willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done." But see, I did not see this as two separate wills between Jesus and the Father. Why? Because Jesus is clearly willing and choosing to do the Father's will. So if it's his will to do the Father's will, well, what's the freaking difference? One will in the Trinity. Schizo Jesus in himself now, a divine and human will, two wills within Jesus. See, I had already realized that we do not have to wrestle with a schizo dual nature within ourselves. My old crooked will died with Christ. I don't have to live in a constant battle fighting off my old nature. But see, I began to realize as I dug deeper into this that I was reading Constantinople 3 all wrong. And actually, it is one of the drunkest, most amazing things on the planet. There was an Orthodox theologian at the time named Maximus the Confessor. Now that's a pretty cool name, Maximus the Confessor. And he talked about two types of wills. That we as human beings have a natural will, and then there's this other thing called a gnomic will. Let me explain. The natural will is just normal, everyday human nature. Our desire to do what humans want to do. Go to the grocery store, buy yourself a dog, eat popcorn at the movies, help an old lady across the street. But here's the kicker. See, the Orthodox understanding of our natural will is totally different from the modern American evangelical idea that the human will is totally depraved. To say you're only human, for a lot of Christians, that means you're sinful and evil. But no, the Orthodox, they believe in original innocence. They say that our natural will is actually made by God with factory default settings to be oriented and prone to do His will and walk in the Spirit. We are made in His image. That is the real, true self. So to say that Jesus had a human will is not unorthodox. It's not contradictory. It's natural and normal, like Adam in the garden before the fall. Your wants and desires and motivations are organically geared to be in synergy with God. But then there's this other will that Maximus talks about called the gnomic will, from the word gnosis or knowledge, wherein as humans we deliberate and rationalize things in such a way that we end up choosing death, sin, or nothingness, which is actually contrary to our nature. It is contrary to our natural human will. Now see, the gnomic will is not actually a thing in itself. It's more of a deliberative choice to rebel against God. It's like a sinful inclination or a perversion of the natural will. It's like it does this judo move and twists the natural will, but it's not a thing in and of itself. See, for Maximus, gnome properly refers not so much to a will, but an inclination, a propensity for man to do evil with his natural will. Again, our natural will, which is instilled into us, is the very DNA of our creation. It is downloaded within us to do what is good, to want to do and has the ability to do good without the need for deliberation, the very thing which makes us human, both physically as well as spiritually, our natural will. Contrary to those who think that man innately wills evil, no, the natural will innately desires what is good. At our core, we desire and choose what is good by nature. And our will directs us to nourish our body with food, to raise our children properly, to be faithful to our spouse and friends. It directs us to help and love our neighbor. It is within the very essence of man. And so Christ himself, being both God and man, and sharing whatever it is to be fully God and fully human, therefore had a natural human will. We see this because Christ willed to eat, to drink, to sleep, to work in Joseph's carpenter shop. He performed any other numbers of human activities which are natural to mankind. He reveals what it's like to be really human again. But humans under the fall have this other thing going on, this schizophrenia. Because we have this twist, this perversion, this inclination, a propensity of the natural will to do what is bad. And again, that is the gnomic will. But again, we can't really talk about man having a gnomic will in the same way that we have a natural will, because a natural will is a real thing, whereas the gnomic is just a bending of the real thing. It's like a lie, okay? A lie, by Webster's dictionary, is a noun. It is a thing, but a lie is not really a thing. It's smoke and mirrors. It's nothing. It's a delusion, okay? And in the same way, this gnomic will, like this sinful nature, because that's really what we're talking about here, the sinful nature, it's not a real thing in and of itself. It's a delusional state. It's more of a bent in which the natural will, which has substance, gets subverted and acts out in bad ways. Okay, we have a natural will to eat, but the gnomic will perverts it and makes us food addicts. We have a natural will to party, but the gnomic will might make you an alcoholic. A natural will to succeed and prosper, but the gnomic will could turn that into greed and avarice. A natural will to have sex, but the gnomic will sends us to the strip club instead of putting a ring on it, okay? So gnome, for St. Maximus, refers to the inclination that arises in humanity through sin, which leads toward that sorrowful observation of the scriptures that there is not one righteous man left, not even one. As sin becomes ever more part of the context of human existence, it became a habit, an inclination that drove man ever towards wrong, debased, transgression, living outside of its God-created will, an inclination that drives the manifestation of our natural will to go wonky and habitate and gravitate towards evil. So in a very real sense, you could call this gnomic will the sinful nature, couldn't you? And is the sinful nature really a thing in and of itself? Absolutely not. It's a lie existence. Again, it's just pulling a judo move on your God-given human will, so that your own God-given human willpower gets thrown backwards upon itself and directs it to a wrong, wobbly way. So was Maximus saying that Jesus had a sinful nature or a gnomic will? Well, now this is something he developed in his theology. Of course, Jesus did not have a sinful nature or sinful propensities. He was not inclined toward evil. He did not deliberate evil. The straight answer is absolutely no. Jesus did not have a gnomic will. But it was, in a sense, a possibility because he opened himself to every frailty we have, temptation. He stepped into our dilapidated human condition. Jesus had a natural human will, but in the same way that our natural human will is broken and confused and limited in knowledge and strength, Jesus stepped into our broken condition. And any twisted propensity that we have to incline against our Creator, well, he beat that thing back into submission on our behalf. His repentance was our repentance. His faith was our faith. His baptism was the baptism of the entire world. In his circumcision on the 8th day, the entire world was circumcised. I mean, why circumcise the Gentiles, asked Paul? They're already Jews now, thanks to Jesus. So look, Jesus did not have a gnomic twist or a gnomic perversion, but he did beat back his natural human will into alignment, therefore beating your human will into alignment. No, see, they never said that these two wills, Jesus' divine and human will, were separate. You see, this is where I missed it with Constantinople III. In saying that Jesus has a divine and a human natural will, well, the whole whack and glory on it was that the human and divine will in Jesus are completely united. They were not saying Jesus was schizo, and therefore now my human will has been reformed and aligned with the very will of God in Jesus. I don't have to desire porn anymore, or methadone, or burning kittens, or being racist, or stealing from the cash register. And each of us similarly can now live in the flow of unity between our human will and his divine will. There doesn't have to be this friction and this tension. And see, here's the whole kicker about Constantinople III, was that the human and divine natures in Jesus were not in opposition to one another. That was the whole point of what they were saying. The fathers are saying meaning Jesus' divine and his natural will are in complete cohesion. Jesus had two wills totally reconciled in compliance and unity, so that my will is now reconciled and compliant to God. The struggle is over. The battle is over. The divine and human in Christ must not be conceptualized in terms of parts, for one and the same are wholly both. Okay? The integrity of Jesus' humanity isn't threatened by this union with the divine, but rather the one nature deifies and the other is deified. There is no aspect of Jesus that does not fully exist within this divine union. In this union, he deifies our humanity, making us participants of the divine nature. You have a divine nature. There's a lot of glory on that. He has two wills, but there is no act or will in opposition to God in Jesus. His human nature is and wills in perfect harmony and concurrence with his divine will, the church fathers said. But now there's this whole thing I want to return to quickly about this idea of Jesus' will versus the Father's will. Now that I know Jesus is not schizo, that his human and divine will are in sync with one another, well, let's turn now back to this whole dilemma of Gethsemane, where it looks like two different things are going on. See, for me, the very fact that Jesus complies with the Father's will tells me that these two are also in sync. If two wills are for the same thing, well, is that really division? Of course not. That's unity. Not my will, but yours be done speaks not of division, but unity in the heart of the Trinity. The true freedom, emancipation of the will, your freedom from sin is realized when we see that his will was always our deepest, if not hidden, desire. Underneath all of those twisted perversions, the thing that I'm really longing for, the one scratch to my infinite itch, is found in his will. I found an amazing quote recently from Pope Benedict, okay? He said, human will, by virtue of creation, tends towards synergy. Synergy, working together. We're prone to work together with God by nature. Original sin is not your original nature. Now, yeah, look, we've all been touched by original sin, but Christ is your truest nature. He is your authentic blueprint, not fallen Adam. Anyways, Benedict says, but through sin, opposition to God takes the place of synergy. Man whose will attains fulfillment through becoming attuned to God's will now has the sense that his freedom is compromised by God's will. And therefore, what do, guys? We rebel against God's will, right? With this idea that God's will is slavery or a limitation, or he's holding something back from us, so we eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And the whole world thinks of Christianity as this legalistic bondage, that to do God's will is bondage. And so they opt to do their own thing. But there's no freedom outside of God's will. Anyways, Benedict goes on to say, he says, the drama of the Mount of Olives lies in the fact that Jesus draws man's natural will away from opposition and back towards synergy with God. And in doing so, he restores man's true greatness. In Jesus' natural human will, the sum total of all of human nature's resistance to God is present within Jesus himself. See, look, in bending his human will towards God, Jesus was vicariously bending all of our human will towards God. As the last Adam, he represents the human race, curbing it back, realigning our human will towards the Father. That is what he was doing in the garden. And so what does the blessed Pope write next? He says the obstinacy, the stubbornness, in other words, of all of us The whole of our opposition to God is present and in his struggle. Jesus' struggle right there in the garden. See, you were in him in the garden. And Jesus elevates our unrepentant nature to become its real self. He restored you back to who you are, your true natural human will. He goes on, he says, the prayer, not my will, but yours, is truly the Son's prayer to the Father, through which the natural human will is completely enveloped into the I of the Son. Not my will, I. He's saying that as an I, as an individual, but all of us are in that Son, right there, in that I. Indeed, the Son's whole being is expressed in the not I but you, in the total self-abandonment of the I to the you of God the Father. This same I has subsumed and transformed humanity's resistance so that we are all now present within the Son's obedience. We are all drawn into sonship. Guys, it is all his vicarious repentance. So I just pray for you guys. I pray grace and revelation on you as you awaken to your true and holy will in God. The struggle is over. Okay, he is your deepest longing. And before we move on, look, hey, speaking of will, Lord willing, you can join us for a party and bring all your friends, your pastor, your elders, your grandma to one of the craziest supernatural finish work and fun activation events on the docket. And one of these is our Gospel Fun House Tour. It is kicking off at the end of February, beginning of March, okay? Next month, coming to 4 cities. I'm going to be in the Deep South, in Georgia, in the greater Atlanta region. Our absolute only event in the South on the calendar. So make the trek over. If you're in Mississippi, come over, Alabama, wherever. And then I'm in New York City, and I won't be back in that area for a long time either. So come join us in the Big Apple. My only stop for the entire year in the Great Lakes region will be in Cleveland, Ohio, and then also my one and only stop in the Great Plains for 2017. I'll be in Omaha, Nebraska, okay? So if you're within a few hundred miles of these spots, grab yourself some coffee and corn nuts, hit the road, get hijacked by the Holy Ghost of God in one of these 4 cities: Atlanta, New York City, Cleveland, and Omaha. Gospel Funhouse. Me and Tim Wright. Grab tickets while you can, thenewmystics.com/fun. And in April, we're both going to be in Newport News, Virginia for a unique event, John Crowder Naked. I'll also be with my clothed cousin, the infamous Scott Crowder. And if you want to find out about that, visit thenewmystics.com/naked. And later in April, my wife Lily Crowder will be with Benny Johnson and Melissa Wood for a women's retreat in Santa Barbara, California. You can find the details on our site. And the following week, beginning of May, I'm also going to be in California for my only left coast event of the year in Redlands, Southern California. And then later in May, Tim Wright and I blast across the Great White North to 4 cities in Canada. We're hitting Montreal, Toronto, Edmonton, and Abbotsford. You can find all the details at thenewmystics.com/CAN. If you're Canadian and you watch the Jesus Trip, do us a huge solid and spread the word. And my next and only confirmed mystical school on the calendar for America is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in June. So hit up thenewmystics.com/PA. And if you want to take a blind dive into the straight up crazy, then I have just the adventure for you. There are just a few slots left for a 3-week summer internship. We're hitting the Trans-Siberian Railroad. We're going to Russia, Mongolia, Hungary, Armenia. This isn't for everybody, and I only have a few slots left. It's not cheap, it's not necessarily safe, but it is the drunkest thing you could imagine. So if you're looking for some hands-on impartation, some personal time with me, you want a taste for both itinerant ministry and missions, your first step is stop thinking, just lean into faith and sign up for this glory train at thenewmystics.com/RU before someone else takes your spot. And we also have a more affordable mission trip that I'd like to mention actually for the first time here on the Jesus Trip. Next December, we are rolling into 2 nations, Hong Kong and Philippines. In the same week, we're going to build a brand new home for orphan children in the Philippines this year. We've got it on our heart to just break ground on this thing right away, and by then we'll have it finished. You can come play with the kids, hit the garbage dumps with the poorest of the poor, minister with me at a big glory event in Philippines and also a conference in Hong Kong. And I'm mentioning this one early in the year because our spring mission trip to India filled up fast. We can't fit anybody else in there, but look, these things do book out in advance big time. So don't wait for the sign-up deadline or you're bound to miss the boat. So throw in your deposit by faith early on, lock in your spot now for this one at thenewmystics.com/go, G-O. And finally, hey, we haven't forgotten about our Western European friends. My only stop in Europe, Western Europe this year will be in Germany this fall. We actually have 2 exciting events in Germany. We've got a divine ecstasy conference, a drunken melee near Cologne called Supernatural Joy Unspeakable, and then we have a 3-day mystical school near Frankfurt in Hanau. So you can make plans now, hit them both in the land of schnitzels and Oktoberfest. You can find all our events at thenewmystics.com/schools.
Sons of Thunder runs on partnerships and generous contributions from people like you. If you've been blessed by the ministry and want to participate in sharing the gospel and reaching the poor with us, consider becoming a monthly supporter at thenewmystics.com/partners.